Hello my friends, David Kessler here and welcome back to the studio. Today we're going to do another watercolor demonstration. Right, so many people, after I did the first one, so many people asked for more watercolor painting demos. So that's what we're going to get today. We're going to do something a little bit different. It's not a non-objective abstract painting. It is abstract painting, but it's going to reference some subject matter. I'll tell you a little bit about that, more about that when we get to the palette to do the painting. I'm using Core watercolors made by Golden. Core spelled Q-O-R. And I heard somebody recently that was selling those watercolors and they said their Q-O-R is the name. The name is actually Core, right? Q-O-R is not necessarily an acronym, it's just the name of the paint. So those are watercolors I'm using. I'm using simple nylon bristle brush. For the 2-inch brush, I'm using a 1-inch brush that's a natural sable hair brush, natural bristles, Kolinsky sable. Fabriano Artistico watercolor paper, 300-pound rough press. And I'll tell you the rest of all that stuff once we get to the palette. I'm using a reference from a painting I did many years ago. And I always liked the painting, and I like that it's sort of partially representational, partly abstract. So I'm going to revisit that composition and just see what happens. Right? I mean, it's not an exact science. You just kind of see what happens once you get into it, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to have a good time. Please get your painting gear, right? Get your watercolor painting gear, get set up, and then watch the video. Paint along with me and then stop it as you need to, right, to catch up or do your work and then, restart it and all that. But just, paint with me. It's a fun thing to do. Hope you enjoy it. Let's get to the palette. Okay, here we are at the palette. Now, like I said, this is going to be a kind of a, sort of a landscape painting, if you want to call it that. But it's going to be abstract in nature. So this is a little value study that I have here. It's actually a picture of a painting that I did many years ago, and I've always loved it and I wanted to revisit it. And essentially it's just, the inspiration for this came from beech trees. And beech trees often will, at least around here in North Carolina, will come from the same trunk, right? You'll have two branches, two main branches from a trunk, and that's what this is. My intent here is to have a sort of mostly a cool painting, the trees being somewhat warm, and maybe I'll include some warm areas in here, for center of interest with some white. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I want this to be fairly loose and quick and not, a study of trees, but more an expression of, okay, here's some shapes. They kind of look like trees, but in an abstract sort of a way. And one of the things on this composition to think about, is the sizes of these negative shapes in the back. And you would want them to be all a little bit different in terms of their size and how they hit the edge and that sort of proportion around the edge. So I've tried to make that interesting, with the two main stems and the breaking up of the space, the division of the space, I should say. And I've gone ahead and kind of roughed it out with pencil on my paper. Now, what I'm using here is Fabriano Artistico 300-pound watercolor paper. This happens to be rough press paper, which is made the same as the cold press. It just happens to have a different surface texture on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, like I always or almost always do, on damp paper. So I'm going to turn this over first and wet the back of the paper. Now I'm going to use a 2-inch, this is just a 2-inch nylon brush. Okay. I'm going to take a damp sponge, take the water out from the edges. Then I'm going to squeegee the water that's in the paper out of the paper. And I'm going to leave the surface fairly well dry. I think with this one's probably going to be multiple sets of complementary colors. Probably going to be yellow and violet, red and green, and blue and orange. So it's kind of a tetrad plus, I don't know what you call that, but I think that's probably what it's going to end up being. The key really for me is I want it to be mostly a cool painting, with the warms being the center of interest area. To begin with, I'm going to start, just really just laying in some background color. I'm going to start with some yellow ochre. Kind of thin, washy. Maybe I'll put some cool red in there, quinacridone red. All right, so let's leave a little bit of white area in there. And continue having fun just laying in color. Now I would think as I move toward the right of the page, it's going to start to get cooler. Maybe it's going to be warmer over here on the left side. I'll start introducing a little bit of this red. Now what I want to do is gradually start to get some cooler color in here. Maybe not so gradual. Kind of cool some of the top of this off. Okay. Cool paint. Using what's on my palette. Probably going to dry a little bit of the surface, get a little bit of surface water off, and I'll be back. Alright, so let's start laying in a little color in this thing. Start with some cool reds, warm red. And I went back, while I was away, I went back in and reworked my lines. Adding some warms and some violets in here, just for fun. Trying to cool that down a little bit. And I'm just sort of randomly really putting in some green, some cool colors. Here. Just looking at and thinking about the shapes that I have. Always thinking about the shapes. back in with a little, a little bit more definition. Too much paint there. Just lighten that up a little bit. That, my friends, is it. All right. So what I love about this is it's predominantly, well, I think predominantly a cool painting. Right, I've got some warmth over here, and gradually it gets cooler as it comes over here. And I do that because really this part of the painting is the center of interest, right? This is the warmest area with the reds and the oranges and the violets and the yellow ochre. Right, and the cooler at the bottom. Cooler here as this shape goes up. Right, and you say, oh, well, it's two trees, or maybe it's this, or maybe it's that, or maybe it's the other thing. What I like about it is an abstract painting, but it's got some reference to reality, to a landscape, or to whatever else that you want to say. And I like the division of space on the edges, right? So and the shapes as they move up and around the page, and I think that's very successful part of the painting. I really like that, the way the shapes vary. And there you have it. It's as simple as that. I hope you were able to paint along as we went, and I hope you enjoyed it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that demo. It was a lot of fun for me to do. Hopefully it was fun for you to watch, and hopefully you were able to kind of paint along, right? Doing the different layers and putting the colors in there. While I am an abstract painter, lots of times when I do a watercolor, I'll do things that are not necessarily just abstract. I'll put subject matter in, reference subject matter and that sort of thing. It's kind of what I'm used to doing with watercolor. Sometimes I'll do strictly abstract, sometimes, usually non-representational abstract. This is still abstract painting, but it has representational subject matter. So I hope you like this. I mean, I had so many people with the last watercolor paintings request more watercolor painting, so I hope this was helpful for you. Hope you enjoyed it. Certainly if you did, please, share it with your friends. If you're not a member of the channel, please subscribe down below. I'd appreciate that. You can join me for a workshop somewhere across the country. There's a link below for the workshop page on my website where you can check all the places I'll be this year. And I hope it was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for your support, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks.